I'm very honored to be with you today. So let's start all over. So I discovered one thing watching sharks up close that it's very interesting because it highlights a community-based network actually that, of spotters dedicated to keeping both people and sharks safe along the coastline. So I would like to know actually what was your role like in the documentary with Bertie Gregory, like what were your your aim to to tell this story? Actually, what do you hope the people we get away with these core messages? Because we have discovered things that I didn't expect. I don't know if it will be a spoiler or not, but it's very interesting that you show a new part, a new way of presenting these big predators. So thank you for your response.
My participation in part was definitely on the science side of things, and the main role was providing a little bit more kind of scientific explanation for great white shark predatory behavior and some of the trends that we're seeing in white shark sightings up and down South Africa's coastline, and highlighting some of the major threats facing these animals. And the I would say the textbook narrative since I was a child when we learn about sharks, that there's actually a lot more to them than meets the eye than what Jaws and kind of the original intro to white sharks was for many people a few decades ago. So that my main takeaway and role really was, providing what I think is so fascinating about them is really that environmental context of what is, what really fascinates folks about white sharks is how not mindless and bloodthirsty they are. And then also adding another dimension, and something you highlighted, Laura, really well about the community-based approach in PLET is that it really is going to take intersecting community effort to preserve these species because they are imperiled in South Africa. And the primary threats are actually human activities, not necessarily the sexy story that has gained a lot of traction of natural predators. So for me, that was really a key takeaway is their critical role in the environment. There's so much more to them than we think, and we are uniquely positioned in this opportunity to save them. But the time is now to take efforts to do so.
Then I would like to ask you, I have been following some of your work, so it might sound like a more generical question to you, but you began to diving and taking underwater photo like just when you were like 12 years old, and you have, worked with a lot of legendary figures like also Sir David Attenborough. So I would like to know, like, since Shark Up Close for me, it's a very different kind of documentary because it doesn't show like the uh, like the spectacular things or like the violence, but actually shows the reality and how beautiful can be the reality of nature when you are looking for something and you find something else. So I would like to know, how did you work from the very beginning when you were only a child, and now how all your work has been shaping from that moment, from how you see storytelling in documentary now?
Well, yeah, it's been a long journey, that's for sure. I mean, I've been diving for 25 years, so it's not an easy job to get into. There aren't many of us that are lucky enough to call this a job, and we are very lucky to call it a job. And people often think it isn't a real job, but there are times when it feels like work, especially when things aren't going very well, which is what happens in this film, as you've seen. What I think is really nice with this film is it does show the less glamorous side of trying to make these kind of films. We were on location for a long time, a lot of challenges, a lot of frustrations, a lot of tempers getting short, and yeah, a lot of waiting around. But that's kind of when you're challenged the most in this job because at any moment that could all change. Literally in the next 5 minutes, the animal could show up, the visibility can clear, the clouds part, and the sun comes out, and all of a sudden we've got to do the job now. So you're in this constant state of preparedness. So yeah, every morning at 5 o'clock when the alarm goes off and you're prepping your gear and you've not used it for a couple of weeks because nothing's happened, it can be testing. But that's when the universe would send along an amazing opportunity when you're not ready, you know. And as you saw in the film, that's how we were rewarded, you know. And I think Bertie put it in a great way. Like nature very much rewarded our patience and our resilience, not with the encounter we were expecting or the one we went out to get, but one that was just as special, if not more special. And that was a really amazing encounter that we had with the southern right whales in Plett. So yeah, this was a really great film to work on in that regard. In that regard, and yeah, I got to meet Lacey and work with Lacey as well. And Lacey spent far more time in Plett than me. I'd worked there previously as well, but yeah, it took us by surprise there not being any animals, and it at least made us feel like we weren't going crazy, and it wasn't just us having Lacey bring in some scientific rationale to the team.
Yeah, and I would like to know, working together, you and Lacey, at the end of the shooting, when I don't know if you have, I think you had the chance to see all the documentary already. So what were your thoughts about it? Like, if you felt some kind of, satisfied of what you were going to show, because it's something that is different, like I said, like I think there is. That you have to use a kind of different sensitivity also, to show what's really there and not to give, sometimes what public want. So what were your thoughts at the end of it?
Have you seen the film, Lacey?
I haven't finished it, embarrassingly so.
Okay,
Oh,
I've been
sure.
head underground with my own students right now. I've seen
Okay,
snippets, so Dan, if you want to take
okay.
this one.
Yeah. I mean, from my point of view, it's yeah, it's a shame to not to this could be a spoiler, but to maybe not come back with the thing that you were going out and hoping to get, and the thing you were kind of charged with going out to get. But you can't come home empty-handed. And we did come back with a film, and yeah, it's not the film that we expected to come back with. But you know, there's always going to be another Shark Fest, so we can go out and try again.
yeah, yeah. And Lacey, I would like to ask you one thing. I think it's the first time that I see like predators, presented that way, like that they are kind of fragile in their environment. So especially when you talk about very young animals. So I would like to ask you if you can tell more about this aspect, like maybe for also for people that are not used to see them in this particular way.
You mean white sharks or kind of sharks in general in
Yeah,
that
yeah, no, white
example?
sharks in that,
Yeah.
like there is a legend of this apex terrible, predator,
Yeah,
but they have fragility as well.
they do. And I think I think great white sharks are a fantastic example to highlight what I think is a truism across nature. And somebody who, if you just enter into the conservation world, be it land or sea, you'll find the messaging that it's an interconnected web. We are so interdependent upon every living organism. And it is hard for us to rework our brain to realize that these big, strong, massive predators that our first impression might be one thing, but they are actually complex beings. There are personalities for sure, to white sharks in particular. And that's something I actually really appreciated about this approach, working with this team and the aim for animals up close. And what Dan highlighted and what you highlighted is you actually now are moving into this narrative that I've loved since I was a child, which is what got me into sharks, is behind the first impression. Never judge a book by its cover. They're a great poster child for that because there's so much personality. And just because they are physically strong and can be fierce and impressive for all of those crazy reasons, um, they are fragile. They're not immune to our impact on this planet. And I think that's why they're such an important example of highlighting our impact on the planet and why it's important to care, because these, what you might think is an indestructible species or unreachable, in fact, that's actually not the case. And we are much more closely connected than we think.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think we have one last question. I would like to
Sure.
ask you what is the fascinating aspect for you, like to do your job actually, because you have done a lot of different things. So if there is something that you hope to show in the future, and what are your major challenges maybe lately?
Well, yeah, there's always the next thing that keeps you pushing and keeps you, yeah, pushing as hard as you can on the next shoot, whatever it is you're filming. But the big challenge at the moment is certainly just trying to do shoots in a changing world. I bounce around all over the globe for shoots, and wherever you go, the locals always say the weather's different. The summer was wetter, the winter was windier, and shoots really rely on predicting the best conditions because time is always our greatest adversary. We always have a short period of time on the location, so you always need an element of luck to get the animals and the conditions. So there's lots of research that goes in place to get you there at the right time, to give you the greatest chance of getting what you're there for. But when things are happening earlier or later or not at all because of changing weather, that's very, very hard. So you more often find yourself coming back home empty-handed or having to change tack when you're on location to look for a different story so you don't come back empty-handed. So yeah, wildlife filmmaking is a challenge at the moment in our changing world.
Wow. Yeah, I think
Sorry.
well, no. Yeah, I think it's one of the aspects that, I was wondering about. And also, can I ask you, how did you learn? I mean, like, I know basically your story, but it's different when you are like face to face with something. Do you think it's there is always something you have to learn
Oh,
from?
always.
Yeah,
Yeah, always. Yeah. Every shoot you come back from, when you look back at the version of yourself on day one on the shoot and you go, man, that guy was such an idiot. He knew nothing about this thing we were trying to film. By the end of it, you're an expert because you spent, we might have been sent somewhere to film a tiny fish that does a really interesting behavior, and we might spend, 3 weeks just filming that fish. So we're almost the world expert on that fish by the end. But yeah, you look back at yourself at the start of the shoot and you go, man, I just knew nothing then. And that happens on every shoot. So yeah, there's always something to learn.
fantastic, fantastic. And yeah, I would love to, I don't know, like if it doesn't interrupt you, I think I can go on because it's very interesting. Like,
Yeah, we've got a
uh,
little bit of time, I think.
yeah,
Mhm.
it's like 15 minutes more or less. So like, I'm starting to get involved into the documentary way of filming or filmmaking, and I would like to ask you, how do you get in touch? I mean, when you start a project like Sharp Up Close, uh, how do you get in touch? I mean, like, do you find yourself when you have met Lacey, did you already exchange some messages, talk about the topic, talk about the, weather condition, or there are other people like involved that do this for you, or do you already try to, kind of build a team before getting to the
Mm.
place?
So from my point of view, my role is quite binary. I'm there to shoot underwater. That's my role. So there's a whole other team involved in this production, from there's production managers, there's researchers, there's assistant producers, there's executive producers, and they do masses of work that very often goes unseen, and they're kind of the unseen saviors of these kind of films because they're the ones that they do all the research, they get us in place, they book the accommodation, they come up with all the plan B kind of options in case we need to go and do something else. They do all the research, they find people like Lacey, to plug into the team. So there's lots of that. I join relatively late in the production really, and I'm a tool to be used on the production for a certain role. Same as there's also, but my friend James that was on the shoot, who was a drone pilot and safety diver. We're all put on the production as tools to make the job happen. I mean, Lacey you work on a bunch of different shark shows, right? So you're contacted by production companies from all over the world, probably.
A couple, not tons and tons. I'm still, I would
Okay.
say, new on the scene,
Okay.
only fresh out the graduate degrees. But yeah, so a
Okay.
couple.
Yeah.
But yeah, and
And
very
that and
much
that's
each specialty. Yeah.
and that's as a advisor and presenter and yeah.
I come in from my knowledge and experience with sharks in general. White sharks and plet actually was my particular area of expertise, research wise, but in
Right.
shark work in general, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. thank you so much. Like I think it's very interesting to know how, like when you see a product, how it is made, so how people, have collaborated to bring a vision to the table. And so thank you so much for your work. I really, enjoy every minute of it, and I really
Pleasure.
enjoy like all your work you have done so far. Then I think you are not only like a binary part, but it's very difficult what you do. So like
Thank you.
it's very nice to find out how modest a person can be. So thank you so much for your work, and thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your time. And it's fantastic to see this work.
Pleasure.
So very
Nice to meet
appreciate.
you.